Welcome to old people and welcome to new people. So yes, this is a very special evening this evening because this is our first day of our 7 Steps to Enlightenment course that we're running every day this week. We started with meditation this morning, one lot led by Jnanavatra, one lot led by Garvavati, and we've got this evening class from 7 till 9 this evening. So if you're on that course, a very, very warm welcome. If you're not yet on the course, it's free to sign up. And if you sign up on the course, that means you get access to our morning meditations, which we're running on Zoom every morning at 8:15 and 8:30. So do sign up. At the last count, we had 989 or something like that signed up. So it'd be great if we could get 1,000 people, not far off that, all meditating together and all taking these steps to enlightenment. So in the evening sessions, which will be led by different ones of our teachers from the London Buddhist Centre, we're going to be exploring the life of the Buddha, and I'll say a bit more about why we're doing that, what that's about in a minute. But I'll just say the format of the evening so you can sort of settle into it. So the first part of the evening is going to be me talking, so I'll talk for a little while, I don't know, 20 minutes or so, and then we'll have meditation and I'll guide you in that. So whether you're brand new to meditation or been meditating for a little while, that's all fine. I'll lead us through meditation. And then there'll be a chance for a cup of tea. So I'm afraid you have to get your own tea. Usually at the Buddhist Centre, we serve you tea and biscuits, but you have to get your own tea tonight. And me and the crew will have a cup of tea as well for about 10 minutes. And the second half will start about 8 o'clock. There'll be more of the story, the exploration of the life of the Buddha. And there'll be a chance for you to ask questions. So while I'm talking, you can just, if anything arises, there's a question, or you'd like to hear a bit more about that, or you're not quite sure about that, you can just pop that in the chat box. And then, I'll do my best to respond to any of your comments and questions. And then after that, we'll have one more meditation. So we'll finish the evening at 9 o'clock this evening, and we'll finish with meditation. So hope that all sounds good to you. So for the moment, we won't be meditating for a little while. So just sit comfortably, just sit at ease. And then I'll start going into a little bit more detail about, these steps to enlightenment and what the life story of the Buddha has to do with us here and now, in the 21st century, and especially in this very particular and even peculiar situation that we find ourselves in. Good. So, let me just pause for a breath. That was quite a lot of information there. So I'll just pause for a breath myself, and you can just settle wherever you're sitting, on your sofa or armchair or whatever. So we're going to, over these next number of nights, hear about the life story of the Buddha. And I just want to say why we're doing that. So the Buddha, as far as we know, the Buddha was a historical figure who lived 2,500 years ago. But when I'm going to be talking about the life story of the Buddha, I'm not talking about it as a history lesson. It's not that... it's not that by signing on to this course, you've signed to, learn something about history, really. There might be some historical interest, but it's something much deeper than that, because the life story of the Buddha is an archetypal life. It's a story of someone on a quest. And because it's an archetypal life, because it's a mythical life, it will map onto our lives, especially it will map onto anyone's life whose life is questing for truth, for freedom, for love, whatever we're questing for. This archetypal life will see resonances, and that's why we're going to be exploring it. And one thing I've been reflecting on, especially since this corona outbreak, is that the archetypal realm, or the archetypal stories, if they really are true, then a crisis like this shows you even more truth in them. In a sense, they become more true. Their truth reveals itself to us. As I say, if they really are true. Now, some myths don't stand up to that. And I'm pleased to say that so far, for me, this Buddhist myth has stood up. I was remembering in this context a friend of mine who had been a practicing Christian, and then had suffered, quite a lot of difficulties in his life. His marriage had broken up. He lost his job. He was estranged from his children, and he was talking to me, and he said, I've just stopped believing in God. He said, I tell you what, he said, if I was God, I'd be a better God than God was. And I thought, like his myth broke down. Not to say that the Christian myth per se will always break down, but his view of God, presumably as a kind and loving God, whatever his myth was, it broke down. The crisis didn't make the myth more true. It actually just resulted in the myth going. He just thought, well, God hasn't made a very good job of things. I'd be a better God than God was. So far, for me, the Buddhist myth, which actually the Buddhist myth doesn't require any belief in in God or in any sort of anything supernatural. It does require a certain sort of kind of belief, but it's more belief in potential and the power of humans to change. So the Buddhist myth doesn't require sort of belief in the way that some myths do. And so far for me, the truths as expressed in Buddhist teachings, but also in Buddhist archetype, have revealed themselves as more true to me. Someone from the community was asking me, I think it was Alex actually asking me this morning, who's here tonight, was saying, oh, you must have told and heard the life story of the Buddha many times. Don't you get tired of it? And I thought, oh, actually, I don't think I do get tired of it, because each time I tell it or hear it, something new reveals itself to me. In the same way as one doesn't get tired of reading a favourite poem, perhaps, or looking at a favourite painting. Every time you look at it, you think, oh gosh, there's something new in that. Every time you read that poem, you're like, oh goodness, and something new. Or maybe you talk about the poem with someone else, something new is revealed. So it becomes more true. It's got more to say to us. It's got more to say to me. I think that's the other thing about an archetypal story. It's got something to say to me in my life. It's sort of psychologically true for me, for the individual. So that's by way of a precursor for what I'm going to launch tonight, this exploration of the life of the Buddha. So the very first thing to say is that the Buddha wasn't always the Buddha. The word Buddha is a sort of title in a way. It means the one who is awake, sort of awake with a capital A. And I think you can see behind me in the shrine of the London Buddhist Centre, a large golden figure of the Buddha, larger than life, golden. What this is trying to evoke is this sense of awakeness, sort of radiance, the radiance that would come about when you stopped putting all your energy into hitting yourself against reality, stop putting all your energy into fighting reality, and actually just became awake to reality, and therefore in complete harmony with it. While you're fighting reality, well, not only are you using up a lot of energy, but you're using that energy up needlessly because, to put it bluntly, you're not going to win if you try and fight reality. Whereas a Buddha is someone who's woken up, who's in harmony with life and feels the hugeness of life and lives in accord with that, has woken up to something sort of undreamed of, something that couldn't even have been imagined before. And that's what, that's why when you see an image of the Buddha, it's often very big and often might be golden, and, the artist will try to make it as beautiful as possible, but it's trying to evoke that. So the Buddha wasn't always the Buddha. The Buddha is someone who has woken up. So the Buddha was born as an ordinary human being. This is very, very sort of very, very important to us as human beings, that the Buddha was born as we've been born. And he started off life in northern India 2,500 years ago, and his name was Siddhartha. Before he was the Buddha, before he became known as the Buddha, his name was Siddhartha. And he was a kind of prince, not exactly a prince, but a kind of from a noble family. So he was born into this very kind of rich family. And so how the legend begins, how the story begins, is when he was born, a sort of soothsayer came, a fortune teller, and predicted that this little baby was either going to be a great world leader or was going to be a holy person. And the father, who was a kind of king, was very, very keen on the world leader side of things, but didn't at all want his son, his pride and joy, to become a holy person, to take up the spiritual life. So the father did everything in his powers to protect that little baby who became a boy, who became a young man, to protect him from the facts of life. So we're told that he lived in this palace, and that the palace wasn't just very, very beautiful and full of luxury, but it was actively designed to protect against any sort of hardship. So we're told actually there was 3 palaces, one for each season in India, for the rains, for the hot time, and so on. So the young prince didn't even have to, suffer the difficulties of different weather conditions. And it was filled with everything, all the dancing girls, all the musicians, all the sumptuous banquets you could ever wish for. And within the palace, no one who was old, or no one who was sick, or certainly not anyone who was died, was allowed inside the palace. That was all kept hidden away. So that was how Siddhartha grew up. And it sort of worked to an extent, but at some time when he was still a young man, something started to niggle. And what I imagine is he thought, this is kind of a bit cloying, or even a bit sort of boring, being inside this palace, lovely as it is this really everything there is? And he decided, with the help of his charioteer, to sneak out of the palace. He wanted to find, what is outside this palace? You can imagine that if you're, a young man and you're kept inside, sooner or later any healthy person would think, what's outside this? So he goes out, and we're told what he sees. One of the first things he encounters is someone who is walking along, looking very bent and shuffling along. And the prince said, well, who's that? And the charioteer said, well, it's just an old person. And the prince said, oh, what does that mean? And the charioteer is probably quite bemused and explains, well, everybody grows old, of course. And Siddhartha says, well, will that happen to me as well? And the charioteer said, yeah, well, of course it will. And this just caused, huge sort of, just huge sort of concern in the young Siddhartha's mind. Like, you can imagine him going back to the palace, and somehow all these banquets and dancing girls or so on don't quite look the same as they did, because he's very preoccupied by this. Gosh, everybody's going to get old, all these people, and me too. And it looked difficult being old. So he doesn't go out again for a while. He's sort of trying to absorb this, and then he goes out of the palace again. And the next time, he sees someone just lying at the side of the road, looking, sort of writhing around, looking like they're in great pain, groaning perhaps. And again, he asks the charioteer, well, what's going on? And the charioteer said, well, it's just a sick person. And same thing again. The prince has to take in the fact that people get sick, and actually not only that he will become sick. And again, he goes back. Again, I imagine everything, all these luxuries are less and less alluring now that he's had this, this sort of new dimension added to his life. And so he must have spent a bit of time absorbing that. And then he goes out once more, and this time he sees someone being carried along on a stretcher, and they're dead. And he has to take in the fact that actually people die. Not only that he will die, everyone he loves will die. And he's really, really shaken up by these three sights, especially this realization of death. And you can imagine saying, well, what's the good of all this luxury, all this wealth, when we're all going to grow old, get sick, and die? And then he goes out for a final time. And this time, he sees something quite different. He catches a glimpse of someone possibly dressed in rags. But even though this person's dressed in rags, they're walking along very mindfully, very serenely, and they look really beautiful, even though they're dressed in rags and so on. And they're compelling. And Siddhartha said, well, who's that? And the charioteer said, oh, that's a wandering holy person. And then the person's probably gone, lost in the crowd. But Siddhartha suddenly feels some sort of peace after all the turmoil of seeing those first three sights, thinking, there's something in that sight of the holy person. That maybe that's the answer to this sort of, huge existential turmoil that he's been thrown into by the first three sights. So this is the first bit of the story, and I won't go on with the story just now. I just want to explore this a little bit before we meditate, and then I'll go on to the next bit of the story after tea. So you've got the prince and the palace, and then going outside and seeing these four sights, the first three sights of sickness, old age, and death, and then the fourth sight of the wandering holy person, and that having a profound effect on him. So I'm just going to say a little bit about the palace itself, first of all, before I talk about these four sights. So the palace, I think, is a brilliant metaphor for us and what we do in our lives. I think the palace is a metaphor for the way that we project onto our lives a sort of seeming safety and fixity. We think we know or know roughly what our lives are, and especially we think we know what's coming next. And I think I've been thinking about this particularly, of course, now, because everyone in the world really is affected by this virus. And what we've realized is we don't know what's coming next. We were taken more or less by surprise about this. And we still don't know, well, what's going to happen? What's going to happen to us immediately. We don't know whether we're going to get sick, whether our loved ones are. But even if we escape that, we don't know what's going to happen to our world. I mean, people are trying to predict it, the economics and this and that. We don't know. Like here at the Buddhist Center, we don't know when we'll be able to open the center again, even whether we will, what will it be like. I'm sitting here in the shrine room usually, on a Monday evening, we've got, 70, 80 people in this room all listening to a talk on Buddhism and meditating. Don't think we're going to have that again in a hurry. What will we have? We thought we knew, I thought, oh yeah, and then, I'll be like leading these classes every Monday, and then I'll go on retreat, and then I'll do this. And actually, it's all, none of that's happened. Yeah. And what you realize when that happens is you never did know. You thought you knew. I projected a sort of seeming future. I thought I knew what the future was. Well, in a funny way, I didn't even think I knew. I didn't even think about it. It was just like, oh yeah, all these things on my diary, this, that. Then we'll do the urban retreat. Then we'll do this, and then I'll, all these things. As if that was sure, but it never was sure. It never was sure. And yeah, that's now been revealed. And it's a shock, isn't it? So I think the palace is a sort of metaphor for that, how we try and sort of protect our lives from the sort of the actual reality of life. And the actual basic reality is we don't know. Yeah, we don't know. We don't know anything, actually. We don't know anything. And then, of course, Siddhartha sneaks out of the palace. And, it's good. He did, isn't it? It's kind of, you kind of feel, yes, that not just it was good that it's good for us, because if he hadn't done that, he wouldn't have become the Buddha. But you kind of feel, oh, yes, that's what any healthy, intelligent person would do. They wouldn't allow themselves to be just shielded in this even a luxurious palace. They'd want to know what's beyond that. There'd be a sort of healthy dissatisfaction with being kept in like that. And when he goes out, he sees these four sights. The first three: sickness, old age, and death. And, well, in the myth, we're told he sees them for the first time. And you could take this again as a sort of metaphor, that he sees them as if for the first time. And probably we recognize that in our lives. Probably we've all got times in our lives where we suddenly become a bit more aware of these three facts of life, of sickness, old age, and death. Maybe we're a bit more aware of it now, that it's come a bit closer to us. Those facts of life wake us up to themselves a bit. And it's as if we realize them. And sometimes we realize them, kind of as themselves. We encounter death of a loved one, and suddenly we're shocked. We're shocked into alertness by that, or we ourselves become ill. Sometimes we encounter it in other ways. I always think of something one of my sisters said in this regard. I don't know if you're watching, Maureen, my sister, but I remember she said that she first became aware of her own mortality when her first child was born. And she felt such love for her newly born son. And at the same time, she realized, oh gosh, one day I'm going to die. So both happen simultaneously. The love and then the realization that well, life is finite. It'll come to an end. That kind of shocked her into that awareness. So you could think of Siddhartha seeing these first three sights as a bit like that. He became aware of these really as realities. And it's interesting that this happened when he was a sort of youth, a young man, because I was thinking you need a grown-up mind to see these things. You need a grown-up mind to see that the palace is in fact a prison, to see that shielding yourself against reality actually limits your life. Yeah. And you need a grown-up mind to, yes, see these facts of sickness, old age, and death. If you're an immature mind can't see them. If you're sort of, I don't know, intoxicated by health, by your own youth, if you happen to be young, then you won't be able to see these facts of life. If you tend the other way and you sort of fall into sort of despair and a sort of horrified anxiety, then you still won't be able to see them. You need a sort of healthy, grown-up, sort of whole mind to be able to, yes, see where your life is limiting your life. A grown-up mind includes a positive dissatisfaction when you realize that the context of your life is limiting your life. And a grown-up mind is able to include the facts of life, these painful facts of life. A grown-up mind can take them in without just distracting itself in intoxication or falling off the edge of itself into despair and horrified anxiety. So the first step to enlightenment, we're talking about these 7 steps to enlightenment, is to create this grown-up mind, is to become a proper grown-up with a grown-up mind, is to create a fit mind, a mind that's fit to really face reality. And the key to this is mindfulness. And in a moment, we're going to meditate, a mindfulness meditation. We're going to, and when we meditate to cultivate mindfulness, I was thinking is we've all got some degree of mindfulness, we've all got some degree of awareness, but we're trying to expand our awareness. I was thinking if you look between my 2 hands here, if in between my 2 hands is our current awareness, we want to really expand that awareness more and more, so it encompasses more and more of our lives. We're trying to make a bigger mind. If our band of awareness, our band of mindfulness is narrow, then we'll tend to either spin off the top into intoxication, distraction, the pleasure palace, and so on, or fall off the bottom into despair and despondency and anxiety when confronted with the facts of life. We want to make that band of awareness, of mindfulness, big enough to include the whole of us and the whole of life, and sort of big enough and wide enough as well. So that's the first step, to cultivate a fit mind, a sort of grown-up mind. That's what we're talking about. When we talk about becoming a happy, healthy human being, we're talking about somebody who's mature, somebody who's properly grown up, who's kind of got a handle on themselves, who's got a fit mind, a fit heart. And the real key to this is practicing mindfulness. So let's do a bit of meditation now before tea. So what I'm going to ask you to do is just set yourselves up comfortably. So you might be sitting at home on your sofa, and you might be on your own, you might be with some family members or people you live with. However you are, just make yourself comfortable and try and sit in a way where you're upright. And try and sit in a way that your feet are flat on the floor. If you've got meditation cushions, that's fine as well, of course. You can sit on them. And what we're going to do here is we're just going to dim the lights just to get in the mood of meditation. There we are. So the team are just settling into meditation as well. So once you've got yourself comfortable, just closing your eyes. Really, first of all, just connecting with your body, particularly the contact of your body with your chair or your sofa cushions or whatever you're sitting on. And we're going to take some time just to allow ourselves to settle. So a really good way of doing that is just noticing the quality of that contact of your body with your chair, the cushion. Particularly notice if there's any tendency to be slightly bracing yourself. Very often, even though we're sitting on a sofa or a chair, we're a bit tensed, a bit braced, as if we're about to jump up at any moment. Notice that. Seeing if you can allow more and more of your weight to drop down into the cushions, into the chair. You can't force that, but you can just give it a bit of time and encouragement. So you're trying to see if you can get a sense of the whole base of your posture settling. So I often think of the whole base of my posture being like a big sack of rice or sand. Someone's just brought in and put there on the floor. And all the little grains are just settling, finding their level. And see if you get a sense of while your weight's going down, the rest of your torso is rising up. So your spine's rising up in its own natural curves. Your head's just poised. Now see if you can soften your face a little bit more. So often we just habitually tense up in our face. It seems to do that almost just by itself without us noticing. By bringing our attention to it, we can soften our face. And then just see if you can soften your hands a little bit more. Tuning into the sensitivity of the hands. And see if we can soften the belly a little bit more. And now just noticing that our body is breathing. You don't have to make any effort to breathe. Body just breathes all by itself. And in this meditation, we're just going to be mindful of the breath. It just means following the breath with our attention. Not thinking about the breath, just tuning into the actual sensations of the body breathing. Seeing if you can get closer and closer to the actual sensations. All the movements in the body, chest and the belly and the back. The feel of the air in the nostrils. Keep softening the face. Find your mind's gone away. That's all right. Just come back to the sensations of the body and to the sensations of the breath. If there's any sounds going on around about you, just include them in your meditation. You're not trying to shut anything out. So let any sounds be part of this cultivation of mindfulness. Keep coming back to the breath. Patient and persistent. Softening the face again. And now just starting to broaden your awareness out again. whole of the body. Once again, tuning into the contact of your body with your chair or sofa or cushions. Noticing any sounds round about. And then when you're ready, in your own time, just opening your eyes and bringing the meditation to a close. Okay, good. So well done, everyone. Very nice to meditate all together. So what we're going to do now is we're going to have a little break for 10 minutes. And yeah, you can get yourself a cup of tea. That's what we're going to do. I'm going to get myself a cup of tea and just have a little break. And then after the break, I want to tell you just another tiny bit of the story. But then the most important bit after the break is that that'll be a chance for you to ask any questions about the story so far, or about anything about meditation or Buddhism. And yeah, I'll try my best to respond to them, and then we'll have time for a bit more meditation before the end as well. So yeah, for now, yeah, we'll go off for a break and we'll come back in 10 minutes, 8 o'clock. Coming back from tea. Yeah, am I audible again? Yeah, just doing a little sound check. Yeah, good. Good, you can hear me. So, yes, I hope you all had a nice cup of tea. We did. And welcome to anyone who's joined us at the tea break. My name's Subhadramati, and I'm here with my crew from my community, Alex and Polly and Ariane. We all live here at the London Buddhist Centre. I'm really pleased to be bringing you this class this evening. So, good. So, I hope you enjoyed the meditation before tea. So, in the second half of the class, I'm going to continue on a little bit of the story, and then we'll be carrying on with the story of the life of the Buddha over the next number of nights. So I'll tell the next little bit, and then we'll have a chance for you to bring in your comments, questions, and I'll be trying to respond to them the best I can. And then we'll finish with another meditation, and then that'll take us up till 9 o'clock and the end of the class. Okay, so carrying on with the story of Prince Siddhartha. So there he is. He's still living in the palace, but the palace must look quite differently to him now. Externally, nothing's changed. There's still the same dancing girls, musicians, sumptuous food, fine wines, everything he could want. So externally, nothing's changed, but his whole inner life has changed. He's realized the facts of old age and sickness and death, and he'll never be the same again. But he's also had that glimpse of the holy man, of the wanderer. And in that glimpse, that's given him some, I don't want to say hope, that's not quite the right word, but some vision of perhaps there is a way out of this existential turmoil. It's interesting, I was saying that perhaps it isn't literally that he saw the old person, sick person, and dead person, but it was as if he'd seen them for the first time. And maybe it was the same with the holy man. Maybe he'd seen other holy men, women before, but somehow that wanderer, that wandering mendicant, maybe spoke to him in a new way because he'd seen the other three sides. It made the wandering mendicant might have made sense to him in a new way, as something that now seemed to beckon him. So everything has changed. Everything has changed. Nothing can ever be the same again. And in the young prince's mind, he decides to act on these glimpses that he's had, and he decides he's going to leave the palace. He's going to give up everything. He's going to give up everything, and what's more, he knows that no one will understand. But he's compelled to do that. He knows he now has to go on a quest, and he can't. He just can't live in that palace anymore. So again, he enlists the help of his charioteer Chanda, and they steal out at the dead of night. And we're told there's a sort of mythical element to the story here, where the palace gates just swing open as if by magic. And we're told that all these gods and goddesses, a bit like angels, come and cup their hands under the hooves of the horse to muffle the galloping of the horse. So he's able to steal out in the night with no one hearing him. and helped by the gods and goddesses, as it were. And he goes with his charioteer, but then after a little while, he sends his charioteer back. He knows he has to go on alone. And the first person he meets is a beggar, and he swaps all his princely clothes for those beggars' rags. So now he's dressed in rags. And then he takes his knife, and he's got his long black hair and a top knot, and he cuts off his hair with his knife. And that's often depicted in Buddhist art, actually, this cutting off of the long hair. So that's the next bit of the story. It's very, very, very important. And why it's important is that he acts. So it's not just that Siddhartha has seen these foresights, he's acted on that seeing. And that's important because it's not uncommon to have glimpses of seeing the truth of things. We've all probably had that. We've all probably had those moments where we're struck by these facts of life and these facts of old age, sickness, and death, or that we're struck by, gosh, there must be something more to life than this. But what's less common is to decisively act on those glimpses of vision. That's rarer. But Siddhartha does act. And then, this lovely thing about the gates swinging open and the gods and goddesses, the angels coming to help. I think that's what's saying is when we do act in that way, it's as if the universe responds. It's as if, and I'm speaking very poetically here, the universe wants us to grow. So that when we don't ignore those glimpses of vision, when we act on them, when we don't just go back to sleep again, it's as if everything comes together. The doors magically open, just like those palace gates magically opened. And then I really like this image of cutting off the top knot, cutting off his hair. And I think what that speaks to me of is, again, he does something decisive. It's like there's no going back. I think symbolically, like cutting off his like princely long black hair. It's saying that, I'm not going back. There's no going back. And I think what that's saying to us is something about the importance of commitment. So it's not that we literally have to, if we want to practice meditation, if we want to practice Buddhism, it's not that we literally have to leave home, as it were. It's not that we literally have to leave all our possessions behind and sort of go forth in the dead of night. We might, but we don't literally have to do that. But what we do have to do is we have to commit. We have to do something decisive. We have to do something that in effect means that there's no going back. And commitment's always to the unknown, isn't it? It's like we have to, place our stake in the ground. We have to say, okay, I've done this now. Whatever happens, I'm not going to turn back. And again, I think when we do that, like our unseen inner forces come and help us. It's as if we've all got within us all sorts of forces and energies, but most of the time just lie dormant. If all we do is, just watch the next movie or think, oh yeah, I'll start practicing meditation sometime in the future in a vague sort of way. All those kind of inner forces of our psyche, they're not going to wake up for that. But if we really, place our staff in the ground, as it were, if we do something decisive, if we commit to the unknown, then they aroused within us. Actually, we find we're made of more than we thought we were, and we find we do have the resources. So I think it's very, very important to commit ourselves to something that's a bit beyond ourselves, something that means that something will be drawn out of us. Commit ourselves in a way that means that, in a sense, we can't turn back. Actually say, no, I'm going to do this. I'm going to give my word on this. I'm going to do this. So I think that's what I get from this symbolism of cutting off, Siddhartha cutting off his hair, and something more is drawn out. And what is drawn out of Siddhartha, you're going to have to wait till tomorrow to hear the next episode. Jnanavacha, one of our very senior and well-loved teachers here at the Buddhist Center, is going to take us into the next bit of the story. So now we're going to leave Siddhartha, and we're going to leave him having gone forth at the dead of night, wearing his beggar's rags, and about to enter the jungle. And I think jungles really were jungles in those days in India, not some sort of picturesque forest like Epping Forest in London or something where but actually a real jungle. So that's where we're leaving Siddhartha. And I remember listening to one teacher telling this part of the story and saying if it was a film, Maitreya Bandhu actually is going to be also teaching this week, that if we were watching this on a film, what you now see is the camera going back and back and back and back. And what you just see is this huge jungle full of tigers and snakes and spiders and ghosts even. And this tiny figure of Siddhartha, not knowing what's going to come next, knowing he can't go back, he's not going to go back, but not knowing what's going to happen. So that's where we're going to leave Siddhartha, and we'll hear more about that tomorrow. But for now, I'm going to pause, and yes, this is a chance for any questions that you have, or especially questions on the story. It can be more general questions about Buddhism or meditation, but especially if you've got any questions or reflections on the story, then Ariane's going to look at your comments and give me those questions, and I'll see if I can respond. And then we'll do that for a while, and then we'll meditate again. So any questions so far?
Not yet.
Not yet. Okay, let's give it a moment. So,
Thank you, and enjoying the tea break there.
Good. I'm glad you enjoyed the tea break. And very nice. At the tea break, I had a look to see all your comments. I'm very, very pleased to see so many people here for the first time at the London Buddhist Centre online. Very, very special warm welcome to you.
So we have a first question from Phoebe.
Hi, Phoebe.
What are some ways that we can commit to the Dharma in our own lives?
Okay, so I'll just say the question again. So what are some ways we can commit to the Dharma in our own life? So that's interesting, because again, it's taken this point of commitment. Well, in a way, there's lots of ways probably. I think one of the key things is to really try and see if you can set up a regular meditation practice if you haven't already. So really great if you can meditate every day, basically. And this week is if you don't already meditate every day, this week is going to be really made easy for you to meditate every day, because there's online classes every morning. So just you could take this week and think, okay, I'm going to meditate every day for this week. Come what may, I'm going to meditate every morning. And that will definitely have an effect. If you already meditate, well, you can meditate for a bit longer, or you could even, if you have the time, fit in an extra meditation. So I think as soon as you do that, it will have an effect. There's other ways you can commit as well. Of course, if usually I'd be saying, come to the Buddhist Center, go on retreat. But yeah, keep coming to these online classes, and in a few weeks we're going to be having a home retreat that we're going to be running online. So think about that. But the first step would be to try and set up a daily meditation practice. That will definitely have an effect. It might even, have an effect quite quickly in your life. So thank you, Phoebe.
Is there a risk that mindfulness could become another pleasure palace?
So is there a risk that mindfulness could become another pleasure palace? So that's a very good question, isn't it? Who asked that question?
That's from Kim.
From Kim. Hi, Kim. I think if you're the Kim I know, hi, Kim, from my Mitra group. So it could mindfulness be a pleasure? I mean, in a sense, theoretically, yes, but I think in practice, if you're really practicing mindfulness properly, it's very difficult for that to become a pleasure palace in the sense of a trap, because the mindfulness itself awareness itself is what's the word I'm looking for? Is a guard against that. But I think what I do want to say is something about pleasure. So the pleasures of the pleasure palace are what we might call unhelpful pleasure. They're unhelpful because, in a way, they just kept the Buddha, to be Siddhartha, confined. The pleasures of the pleasure palace are the sort of pleasure that just leave you wanting more. You can never get enough. You have the very nice chocolate, and then I remember the days when Green and Black's chocolate was the best chocolate you could get, but now, you can get even more and more and more fancy chocolate, single estate, whatever. That kind of pleasure just it drives you to wanting even the next, yeah? So whereas the pleasures of meditation are what we might call wholesome pleasure. I think it's important that we do look for pleasure in meditation and notice it when we find it, but that's of a quite different order. It's even a different type of pleasure. It's a pleasure that is sort of innocent, it's wholesome. It doesn't leave you hankering after more. You can just enjoy it for what it is while it lasts. So it's important that there is pleasure in meditation and mindfulness, and awareness itself will guard against that pleasure becoming a trap. Yeah, so I hope that's answered the question. Yeah.
And there's another question from Georgie about things going the other way in meditation becoming a chore. Do you have any advice on how to stay in love with the practice?
Say that again, things going the other way?
Meditating every day and it becoming like a chore.
Yes, okay, so how do you stop? Yes, that's very, very interesting. How do you keep meditation being something creative? So I think that probably applies to anything that's creative that we do in our lives. How do you keep it fresh and alive? Very, very good question, actually. Everything can tend towards becoming dull and a bit of a routine. So it's good actually to be aware of that for a start. One of the things I do in my own life is I've got a meditation buddy. So I've got a friend of mine, Abhay Andy, and every single week, we've been doing this for some years, every Monday lunchtime, we spend half an hour talking about our meditation together. And I just find that, we did it today actually, it's very, very enlivening. I hear about her meditation, that feeds mine, but also I get to articulate my own meditation practice, and that's a way of invigorating it. So that's one tip. I think maybe as well what I was saying before is keep looking for beauty and keep looking for wholesome pleasure, both within meditation but also outside of meditation. Those of us living in London just now, we're just amazed by the perfect spring we're having. And if we can get out for a walk, just really enjoy the pleasures that nature's giving us just now. If we can't go out of our house, just find things, music to listen to, or visiting an online gallery maybe, just to fill our minds with beauty and wholesome pleasure, and that will feed into our meditation as well. So I think maybe that's just expand on my own point a bit. So if we do that, then we're not just thinking of meditation as this like 20 minutes or half an hour or hour where I'm sitting on my meditation cushion with my eyes closed. We can actually start to think of our whole life as more in that meditative mode. We can bring the qualities of meditation more into the whole of our life, and again that'll kind of feed it. That'll be like a spring feeding our meditation. But yeah, it's very good actually to be on the lookout for our meditation getting dull and routine, and the minute that happens, think, okay, I need to do something about that. I need to find some new sources of inspiration. Yeah, good question.
So the Buddha left his palace.
Yes.
What might renunciation from worldly attachments look like for a modern Buddhist?
Okay, so yes, what might renunciation look like for us? Gosh, that's an interesting question, and it's going to be different for different people. But maybe maybe I'll say something more general. Maybe I'll actually try and talk about this whole notion of renunciation. It's an interesting notion. I think rather than answering that directly, I would say what's important is to first of all try and get a glimpse of what one is moving towards. Because the Buddha had that glimpse, didn't he, of the wandering mendicant. He saw this mindful figure walking along, and that drew him forward. So I would wonder whether it might be more helpful to think, well, what am I trying to move towards? What is my inspiration? Where is beauty? Where is meaning for me? Can I let that come alive in myself, and can I follow that? And then, in a sense, renunciation will look after itself. I hope that makes sense. What I'm trying to say is, I think the danger, if we think just in terms of renunciation, we'll get a bit sort of sackcloth and ashes, and we'll think that a Dharma life, a Buddhist life, a spiritual life is all about what have I got to give up. Yes, there might be things we have to let go of, but I think it might be more helpful to look at, well, what are we moving towards? And then the unhelpful things will more naturally just fall away. So that's not a direct answer to that question, but I hope it's helpful. So in other words, look for inspiration, look for where you find meaning, value, beauty, and nourish that. And yeah, then renunciation will start to look after itself, as it were, become apparent. Good. Hope that was a helpful answer. Shame I haven't got you here to find if that was helpful, but yeah.
So when meditation makes us feel really happy and good, how can we manage not feeling guilty at a time when so many are suffering?
Okay, so that's very interesting. So we've been asked this question a few times about how can we not feel guilty when other people are suffering? So that might be because we're enjoying meditation, or we might just be enjoying for some of us, it's a relatively simple life during this lockdown. So, and it's true, there are people really suffering, very, very badly suffering in all sorts of ways. How can we not feel guilty? Well, I think one thing to reflect on is, I mean, this might sound a bit stark, but guilt isn't going to help anyone. Guilt isn't, it's not going to help ourselves, but actually it's not going to help anyone. If we allow ourselves to fall into guilt, which is a kind of horrified anxiety, not only are we not helping, but we're just creating another problem. I think much more wholesome to just experience any pleasure that we might be experiencing, but also look for, well, how can I help? We might not directly be able to help someone, that we've read about in India or someone that's really, really suffering, but we might be able to, just smile at a neighbour, phone a friend, do a small task for someone. So enjoy our own pleasure and then try and be generous to whoever, in whatever and to whoever we can, to the extent we can. And just remember that the guilt, guilt isn't going to help ourselves. It isn't going to help anyone. It's just going to tie up our energies. It's not going to add anything to the world. Yeah.
Lilith asks, how can we differentiate true insight from biased intuition?
I'm not sure I quite know what that. So this is a question about insight and biased intuition. Not quite sure what biased intuition is. I might try guess. So I wonder if biased intuition means something like just thinking that wisdom means doing anything that we feel like doing. So insight doesn't mean that. Intuition is an important faculty and the one we can develop. But we can't just rely on that. The very famous teaching of the Buddha that he gave to a group of people called the Kalamas, and the Kalamas were saying, well, how do we know what is the truth? There's so many people say this is the truth, that's the truth. The Buddha said something very, very wise and pertinent. He said that you have to test the teachings in your own experience. So that means with your intuition and experience. But also, the Buddha said, and you also have to pay heed to the teachings of the wise. So you've got to do both, yeah? So you test things within your own experience, but you also regard the wise and listen to people wiser than yourself. That begs the question of how do you know that someone's wise? And again, that can only really be known through through a lot of experience. Yeah. So Buddhist wisdom isn't just a matter of intuition, although it includes that. But and listening to the wise can include, in terms of Buddhism, reading the ancient texts, reading commentaries on the text, listening to talks on them, all that will help you to discern what's more truly insight, what's more truly wisdom. Yeah.
We have a question from Emma, who's fairly new to practice, and she would like to take in as much as possible, but is worried that she'll do too much too soon. Do you think that's possible?
Okay, so Emma's wondering about doing too much too soon. Okay, so let's see. It depends what the too much is. I would say in some ways you can't have too much mindfulness. So I think probably there's no such thing as too much awareness. So I wouldn't. I would rest confident in if you keep practicing mindfulness. Yeah, you can never have too much of it. There probably is such a thing as, I don't know, listening to so many Dharma talks, your mind just gets a bit bombarded. So maybe be a bit discerning in terms of how much you listen to. But maybe if you just sit well, what would my advice be? I was going to say I'm probably a bit biased, but if you just did this course every day this week, that definitely wouldn't be too much too soon, even if you are quite UM. If you meditated with us every morning and listened to one of these talks every evening and meditated a bit more, that's geared to be just right. If you knew that wouldn't be too much, and then you could just see what you wanted to do after that. Yeah, thanks.
So mindfulness is often talked about as being in the present. How can we think about big future life decisions mindfully?
Okay. So that's a very interesting question. Mindfulness is talked about being in the present. What about, how do you think about the future? So interesting enough, although mindfulness often is talked about being in the present, that's not particularly how I would talk about it. Well, for one thing, where is the present? In a sense, the present doesn't even really exist. And mindfulness, mindfulness does include, continuity of purpose, actually, very, very much so. So definitely that does include, in a sense, projecting oneself into the future. Of course, we don't know the events that happen in the future, but you can have an intention that goes into the future. You can have an intention, for example, whatever happens, I'm going to every day keep trying to be a little bit kinder. I'm going to every day trying to be a little bit more generous. I'm going to every day try to cultivate mindfulness. That would all be included in the sphere of mindfulness and continuity of purpose, because it would include, and included in that would be, okay, if that really is my intention, how can I support that intention? What would help me to do that? So that's certainly included in the sphere of mindfulness. Also included in the sphere of mindfulness is being able to reflect on our past, especially our actions. We can look into the past and see, well, was that a helpful, skillful thing I did, or was it unhelpful? And that's how we learn, isn't it? By reflecting on the actions that we've done and what effect they had. So I think I can sort of see why people talk about mindfulness as being in the present. I think when people say that, they mean it's the mindfulness is guarding against just being sort of lost in proliferation of thought or rumination. Mindfulness does guard against that, but we're not trying to get rid of thought altogether. For example, we can certainly have this continuity of purpose, have this reflection on our actions. Were they helpful? Were they unhelpful? Mindfulness includes vigilance as well, sort of heedfulness. What's going to help me to grow? How can I contribute? Mindfulness includes all that. So it's much, much more than being in the present. Yeah.
When we're meditating and noticing things like sounds, how do we take note of them without turning into unhelpful musings about them?
So how do we take note of sounds and so on without turning them into unhelpful musings? So that's a good question. So I talked about sound in the meditation itself. So maybe I'll just go back to that. So if we're meditating, very, very common to have sort of sounds around as we meditate. Here at the London Buddhist Centre, we try and create a kind of quiet, undisturbed environment, but even here we can hear the odd fire engine go by, or there's communities upstairs. It actually sounds like somebody's practicing a musical instrument upstairs just now, so we can hear sounds. So the first thing is, I was saying we include them in our meditation. What I meant by that is they're very, very easy to start almost like thinking that meditation means somehow I've got to try and push all this stuff out so that I can meditate in here. That won't work. We'll just get into a sort of fight with our own experience. So we include in sounds, say, we can include other things as well, which I'll come on to. And how we don't turn them into unhelpful musings is just by trying to just experience them quite directly, just kind of just noticing, oh, that's a sound. We don't even need to particularly try and work out what it is. We can just notice any tendency to kind of wish it would go away and think, oh, just come back to it as a sort of bare sensation. It will just come, it will go. Sound is a sort of, usually there's a continuum of sound coming in and out of silence. So it's every time we notice, oh, what's that? Or wish it would go away, or oh, that's interesting, we can just come back to the sound just as sound. It's just sound, yeah. And the same is true on anything else, actually, either externally or even in our own internal world, like a memory might pop up, or either from far away or a recent memory. We can just let that it just pops up, and it just no need to latch onto it. We can just it'll have a sort of feeling tone associated with it, pleasant or painful or a bit neutral. We just notice that, and let it just come into awareness, and then it will just float out of awareness like a cloud. And every time we notice our mind going into unhelpful musings, as the person who asked the question said, the Buddhist word is prapancha. It means mental proliferation. Just come back to the bare sensation, which means come back to the body, really. Just come back to our physical sense, which is always direct. Yeah, so that gives us something to come back to. Then if we notice the proliferation starting up again somewhere else, just come back to our bodies, our physical sense. Yeah. There's lots of questions. This is good. Yeah. Maybe just one more, and then we'll have another meditation.
Let's finish with this one. What's the meaning of your name?
Oh, what's the meaning of my name? Okay, so who asked? Who's asked? Pixie. Hi, Pixie. That's a nice name as well. When we're ordained, so I'm part of the Triratna Buddhist order, and when we're ordained, we're given by our preceptor a Buddhist name on our ordination. It symbolizes the new life that we enter. We ritually enter in that ordination ceremony as a Buddhist, so we're given a new name. And my name, Subhadramati, means something like very beautiful devotion. That's what my name, well, that's what it means. What it means to me is that I'm committed to a Buddhist life. Yeah, it's a symbol for me of I've committed myself. I've taken a vow to have Buddhist values at the center of my life. Values of of truth, trying to practice kindness, trying to practice truthfulness, trying to practice mindfulness, trying to practice generosity. I've taken a vow to try my best to have these values more and more at the center of my life. So that's what my name means to me, as well as its actual meaning. Try being the operative word. I'm certainly not perfect at any of those things. Only a Buddha would be. But I've made a very, very solemn promise to try and keep deepening those values in my life. Good. Good. So sorry I didn't get to everyone's question. Of course, you'll be able to tune in again tomorrow evening. That'll be time for more questions. So for now, we're going to meditate again. So if you just like to set yourself up again for meditation, we'll be meditating for about 15 minutes, and then I'll just say a few final words. So dimming the lights here. So once again, just taking the time to allow your body to settle. Again, really noticing the quality of contact of your body with whatever you're sitting on. And really noticing a tendency to be slightly bracing yourself. I'm noticing that myself after all the excitement of responding to the questions, the animation of that. I can feel I'm slightly holding myself off of the cushion, so I'm just trying to get a sense of more and more of my weight dropping down into the cushions and dropping down into the floor. Sense of the whole base of the posture settling. And then from this stable base, the rest of our torso is rising up. Our spine rising up in its own natural curves. Our head just poised. Once again, see if you can soften the face a little bit more. And see if you can soften the hands. And see if you can soften the belly a little bit more. And then noticing again that your body is breathing. And this time in the meditation, we want to really practice settling into more and more stillness. Breath is our anchor. At the same time, we're allowing the body to settle into deeper stillness. So let's really practice that. Every time we feel any impulse to move, just use that as a cue to soften, feel more of the weight dropping down. And keep coming back to the breath. Sensations of the breath. It's not a thought about the breath. And trying to get closer and closer to the sensations of the breath flowing through the body. As our mind's gone away, just coming back to the direct experience of the body breathing. And keep softening the face. And as we sit here, mindful of the body breathing, notice any pleasure in the body. Perhaps the simple pleasure of the touch of one hand on the other. Or a subtle pleasure of softening the face. Just enjoying that simple, innocent pleasure. Just keep coming back to the direct sensations of the body breathing. Now just broadening your awareness out again to include the whole of the body. Contact of your body with your chair or cushions. Aware of any sounds. Letting the sounds come to you. And then gradually, in your own time, opening your eyes, bringing the meditation to a close. Good. Good. So well done again, everyone. Lovely to think of so many of us, several hundred of us meditating together from all corners of the globe, really. So we're nearly at the end of the class now. Just want to say a couple of final things. First of all, I just want to say something about just our culture here at the London Buddhist Centre, or one aspect of our culture. So the London Buddhist Centre has been in existence for just over 40 years. And in all that time, we've really tried to create a culture of generosity, a community of generosity. So all our teaching here is, well, we just do that as an expression of our own love of meditation and Dharma practice, Buddhist practice. All our helpers are all volunteers. And we've always tried to make as many of our classes free of charge as possible. And this whole online course we made free of charge. And at the same time, if you'd like to join in with this culture of generosity that we're trying to create, and you'd like to do that by giving a financial donation, that would be really, really welcome. That would really help us, especially at this time where we've had to close the doors of our Buddhist centre, close the doors of our retreat centre. So if you'd like to do that, we're just going to post the link at the side. Yeah, Ariane's nodding. And if you can give a monthly gift, that would be the most helpful thing of all. It would really help us to try and make some plans in this uncertain world. But anything at all that you'd like to give would be more than welcome. And thank you to the very many of you who are already giving. Thank you. And then, finally to say, yes, this is day 1 of our 7 Steps to Enlightenment course. So if you're not already signed on that course, it's not too late. The link for that will be posted as well. And actually do sign on to the course, because that means you can join in our morning meditations as well. They're on Zoom, so we need to send you the link for that. So sign on the course. As I say, it's all free, just by donation if you want to. And then you'll be able to meditate tomorrow morning with Garavavati if you're relatively new to meditation, or with Jnanavachar if you're already experienced in meditation. And then tomorrow night we've got Jnanavachar, who's going to tell the next episode in the story of the Buddha, and again draw out more meaning for us here and now in this situation we find ourselves. So I, for one, I'm really looking forward to that, and I really hope that that all of you can join us for that as well. So I think that's everything from me and team. So lovely to spend the evening with you. Hope you enjoy the rest of your evenings or mornings, for that matter, if you're tuning in from Australia. And yeah, hope to see you again soon.